We have number 13 ranked Arkansas taking on Ole Miss, who currently is ranked 17th in the nation. Both of these two teams suffered their first losses of the season. Arkansas got steamrolled by Georgia 37-0, and Ole Miss got shellacked by Alabama. Even though Ole Miss was able to put up some points after halftime, it still was a pretty demoralizing defeat. Now, I have to give a lot of credit to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is my favorite head coach in college football right now because I love the gusto that he showed last week against Alabama. Even though they lost, he went for it a lot on fourth down. And one thing that Ole Miss was intimidated. Okay, like I've never seen a coach so confident in his team and to be able to go for it on fourth down against Alabama. And although it didn't really pay off in the end, they still ended up losing the game. Like, I have a lot of respect for Lane Kiffin, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who are trolling Lane Kiffin because of the popcorn comments that he made and whatnot, but I have a lot of respect and admiration for what Lane Kiffin did, going for the amount of times that he did on fourth down. That shows you that he has confidence in his team. He was playing to win, not playing to lose. Too many times I see coaches in these big games, instead of going for it on fourth down, they just decide to punt the football. And I really feel like when you do that, there are certain situations that I just feel like you should just go for it on fourth down, no matter the distance. Like if it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, I don't care if I'm inside my own 10-yard line. I'm going for it on fourth down. Like, to beat a team like Alabama, you're going to have to take some chances. You're going to have to take some risk, and sometimes they're going to pay off, and sometimes they're not going to pay off. And that's something that I love about Lane Kiffin. He's not afraid to roll the dice, even if it doesn't end up resulting in the result that he wants. I still admire coaches who are willing to take risk. So I love Lane Kiffin for that. The game that he coached last week, even though, Ole Miss still lost by a pretty big margin, still have a lot of respect for what Lane Kiffin did last week. And if you're an Ole Miss Rebels fan, you should love the fact that you have Lane Kiffin as your head coach right now. Now, for Arkansas, my beloved Razorbacks, man, came up really short against Georgia last week. I mean, the game wasn't even close. And that is the first game I've witnessed Arkansas all year get just manhandled up front. And I didn't think that Georgia was going to be able to come in and just impose the will on Arkansas the way they did. But boy, was I wrong, boy. Oh my God. Arkansas didn't even touch 100 yards running the football. And that's something that is a staple of this Arkansas offense. They have a lot of good running backs. You look at the dual threat ability of KJ Jefferson, but Arkansas couldn't get nothing going last week. So the biggest factor that I'm interested in seeing this game is going to be whoever loses this game is going to be on a 2-game losing streak. And when you look at Arkansas, you have a really difficult schedule in the month of October. Like, you have a lot of tough games. And the big key for these two teams going in is going to be, you can't let Alabama or Georgia beat you twice. Oftentimes, when a team loses to Alabama or Georgia in dominating fashion, they lose the following week because that loss is kind of still stuck in their head mentally, okay? Like, when you play a team like Georgia and Alabama, they don't just beat you physically on the field. They beat you mentally, okay? Arkansas got mauled over. Ole Miss got mauled over. So I'm trying to see which team is going to be able to win this game and not let Alabama or Georgia beat them for a second week in a row mentally. Because when you play a team that's just so tough and just manhandles you, like, it kind of can leave a long-lasting impact. It kind of can take you a couple of weeks to shake back from that loss. Now, how healthy is KJ Jefferson for Arkansas? Now, we don't know just how healthy KJ Jefferson was going into that Arkansas game, that Georgia game, because he was a little bit banged up from the previous week's game and whatnot. So I want to see just how healthy is he going to be. Is he a little bit more healthier in this game than what he was last week against Georgia? We don't really know. Now, Arkansas is coming off the worst rushing performance of the season. Like I mentioned earlier, they only only had 75 rushing yards on the ground against UGA last week. You're looking at an Ole Miss defense that surrendered 210 rushing yards against Alabama. Brian Robinson, man, he basically had his way with that Ole Miss defense. I mean, he had 36 carries for 171 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, he pretty much owned Ole Miss, and Ole Miss hasn't really been that great against the run for this season. So I'm looking at Arkansas. This is definitely a game that they should be able to get that running game back on track. And on top of that, I feel like Arkansas has a slight advantage up front on both sides of the football. I'm not saying that Ole Miss offensive line is bad. I'm just saying when you look at Ole Miss, I just feel like Arkansas kind of has the matchup in terms of how they stack up against Ole Miss in the trenches. I think Arkansas has a better defensive line than Ole Miss, and I still believe that Arkansas has one of the best offensive lines in college football, despite what we saw last week. Now, Ole Miss offensive line isn't bad. Don't get that confused. Don't try to misconstrue my words. I'm saying when you think of Ole Miss is a team that likes to get you out to the perimeter. We're not really knowing Ole Miss for having dominant play inside of the line of scrimmage and whatnot. So I definitely feel like Arkansas has a better matchup in the trenches than what they did last week against Georgia, because, man, Georgia's defensive line is different, man. I just have to say that. That dude, number 99 for Georgia, what his name is, Jordan Davis, that dude is a freaking monster, bro. Like, I've never seen somebody who would get off their block and then cover the edge from the defensive tackle position. He's like Aaron Donald, but a lot bigger, man. Like, that dude is a freak. Ole Miss doesn't have those kind of athletes on the defensive line. Now, Arkansas's offense struggled a lot last week in third and long situations, which I definitely feel like can play into the hands of Ole Miss. Even though their defense isn't the greatest, I really felt like this offense couldn't really get anything going when they got possessed with third down situations where they have to throw the football. Normally, Arkansas wants to run the football, win on early downs, and be in situations and third downs that you don't really know what they could do. They could either run or they could pass, but when you put them in obvious passing situations, it's kind of a disadvantage. So I want to see if they continue to struggle on those third and long situations where they have to throw the football, or are they going to be able to win on those situations and it's the Ole Miss defense going to come up short. Now, despite the deficit of a loss that Ole Miss had last week against Alabama, Matt Corral played really good last week. He was 21 of 29 for 213 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Is Ole Miss going to be able to get this passing game going? Because Matt Corral, to me right now, looks to be the best quarterback in the SEC right now. So I think that we could expect him to have a really big game if he's able to get significant time throwing the football. And lastly, Ole Miss, we know that their defense isn't probably going to pitch a shutout. We know their defense is going to surrender some points. They're going to give up a lot of yards. My question is Ole Miss going to be able to get some key stops on defense? That's when it comes down to it. Can Ole Miss get a big stop on third down and goal in the third quarter per se? Could they get a big stop earlier in the game? Could they force a key turnover? Those are the kind of stops I'm looking for out of Ole Miss. I don't need them to pitch a shutout. I don't need them to force Arkansas to continue to go 3 and out. All I need for this defense is to make some big plays at critical moments during this matchup. Now, another underrated thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is that Arkansas got outplayed on the special teams and the things when it comes to Georgia, because Arkansas, the majority of the time when they had the ball on offense, they didn't really have great field position most of the time. So I want to see how this Arkansas team is going to perform when it comes to how and where they get the ball, because there were some times when they were backed up deep in their own territory sometimes. So the field position battle wasn't in their favor. Georgia special teams definitely was a huge reason for why the score was so one-sided. So I want to see a better performance out of the Arkansas special teams this week. They also left some field goals off the board also, which even though the score was, really one-sided, at that point of the game, I really feel like those 3 points that they left off the board could have affected the game a little bit in terms of how they were approaching and how their game plan was. Now, the team that I'm taking to win, I'm taking Arkansas to bounce back and get the victory. I like Ole Miss, but I feel like Arkansas is the better team up front, and I feel like Arkansas is going to win this game 31-20 is my final score prediction. I think they're going to win this game by at least 10 points or more. And the reason for that is because I don't have a lot of confidence in Ole Miss run defense. And I feel like Ole Miss is going to be able to score some points, but I still feel like Arkansas is going to be able to get back to playing the style of football they want to, being able to run the ball with the talented group of running backs they have, being able to take time off the clock, and be able to maul you up front. And I think that's what's going to happen this game. So to give me Arkansas 31-20, you guys let me know who you guys have winning this game down in the comment section down below if you're watching this on YouTube.